What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Bobby J on 30A. I'm your co-host, Chris Angel, here with your host, Bobby Johnson, and our guest, Nick the Tooth. Nick, I actually don't know your last name, so it's just Nick the Tooth.
Tooth,
call me Tooth, man.
Yeah,
that's good
Tooth.
enough.
Gullo, Nick Gullo.
Yeah, I like
it. Nick was on the last episode,
Yeah.
and we brought him back. It was tough to get him back here, but we did it. And,
I wore the same clothes.
Yeah, right.
He's super shy, and the thing about Nick is that he never says what he's feeling. So
I got that from the last episode.
Here, we would pull it out of him a little bit. No, we go really way back, and I've always been inspired by Nick's thought, his mind, also his you know, I don't want this to come off weird, but Nick has an unusual physique as well. He is ripped.
I have 3 legs.
I was like, wow, unusual physique.
Yeah, I had to wear my tight shirt so I could at least kind of look a little bit ripped like this.
That's
guy.
good. Yeah, you're representing.
Very, very ripped, and I always, when I first met Nick, I thought, man, I'm gonna try to get as ripped as that guy. And what I've learned in life is that that's impossible. That not many people. So you know, when you think about the 10 people, there's you know, I could be in better shape than maybe 9 of them, but then you got this guy, right? So it's like I was trying to achieve something that no one else can actually do because
that's crazy.
No, Nick is genetically a gifted. His own brother even says that about him. I don't think that it's something that, you know, people can work out, do all kinds of things, but he's got. It's just,
Chris, I've been working out in gyms since I was 12 years old. I honestly have never skipped a week in the entire time.
Wow.
So no, the funny.
Ever.
Well, we're on a surf trip one time. We're cruising along the road, and I'm in the back seat, and he's always kind of abused me like a little brother of sorts. You know, like he bangs me up, pushes me into little things, and I won't even get into the story about what he did to my pillow one time, but that's a whole other story. But we're cruising along. He slams on the brakes, and out from underneath this thing is this picture. It's like a framed photo. Do you remember this?
No.
And it's like, it's this dude, and he's all ripped, and he's got on this little bikini, and he's, you know, flexing. And I didn't even know this guy was a bodybuilder at how old were you?
I was young.
16 years old, full-blown bodybuilder, right? And I was like going, what? I didn't even know this, right? So yeah, and here I am trying to chase this same physique, and I just don't. There's not a shot in hell I could never get that. But it's inspiring, and his mind is inspiring. So I'm excited to hear his thoughts on thought.
Yeah, what is this conversation that our thoughts aren't real? I'm pretty sure I've had a lot of thoughts since I woke up this morning. Are you telling me that I didn't have those thoughts?
You definitely have those thoughts, and this was part of my journey with martial arts, is that as I started to compete in jiu-jitsu competition is very intense because you're going against somebody who is trained just as much as you. It's one person, one-on-one in an arena where, you know, potentially hundreds of people are watching, and your mind starts going crazy. Like, what are you doing? You're going to lose. You're da-da-da. Your mind just starts going and going and going. And so I had mentioned in the last episode that I train at one of the most premier gyms in the world. It's called Art of Jiu-Jitsu, and it's under the Mendez brothers, Rafa and Guillermo Mendez, and they are the best in the world. One is a 4-time black belt world champion, and one is a 6-time.
Wow.
And they travel around the world, give seminars. We have people that show up from all around the world that just come and stay at the gym. Like there are surf rats who will go to Hawaii and will just live in Hawaii just so they can surf there for months every year. Well, we have guys that train and girls that train that come and stay at our gym for months from around the world, from Spain, from Japan, from Brazil, and they all come to just train at this gym. And one of the things that Rafa had told me about was that, you know, because we were talking about the mental aspect of competition, and he had told me a concept on one of my podcasts about the Mushin mind. And Mushin mind is actually a Japanese term. It's a samurai term called mind without mind. And what it's about is learning to, in competition, or what samurai in a duel was learning to fight without your mind. and just relying on the training that you have done for thousands of hours and trusting the technique. And so part of that, I really started to delve into it. It wasn't just for me. It wasn't just like, okay, Mushin Mind is just about learning to control my thoughts and not being nervous. It was about, what does this mean? What is the underlying basis of this? And as I started to look into it and study and learn about it, it was just the concept that the mind is something that, the way that I began to think of it was that the mind is a reflexive muscle that has developed over millions of years for one reason, and that was to keep us safe long enough so that we could reproduce. It wasn't meant to keep us happy. It wasn't meant for happiness. It wasn't necessarily meant for success.
Yep.
It was meant for one thing: to keep you alive in the wild, where you are prey, where human beings were prey to other animals with claws and teeth, et cetera, et cetera. We are weak, we are slow, but one thing we had was, like a rabbit, we have a mind that is always like danger, 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 thinking. So that still plagues us. That is a remnant of our evolutionary past that still continues to plague us to this day. And so before you can conquer anything in life, you have to fully understand it. And so as I started to look into this, I was like, wow, we have this evolutionary mind that when I want to go out and compete is telling me and giving me excuses to remove myself from the danger, right? To get me out of there so I won't do it. And so as I competed, and I've competed, in probably 80 to 100 tournaments. And as I started to compete, that became my only driving reason to compete. It wasn't, I learned to not even think about my opponent. I learned to only think and only attempt to silence my mind. Right. And so part of that was, I'm a lifelong meditator. I learned to meditate when I was like 10 years old. And, meditation is a very, very important part of that, because meditation is really training your brain, yourself, to let go of thoughts. As a thought comes, you let it go. As a thought comes, you let it go. And after a while, you learn that you are not your thoughts. Your thoughts are not real. And you start to see the weakness in yourself and the weakness in other people. When people are rageaholics, it's because they think every thought that comes into their mind is real and they have to act upon it. Wow. When someone is suffering from anxiety, they think that every thought that comes into their mind is real and they have to act upon it. And so they attach and they attach and they attach. That's exactly what the Mushin mind is. And it's taken me years.
How would you spell that? Mushin mind.
M-U-S-H-I-N.
All right,
Mushin mind. And so after years and years and years, I have learned that my mind is not my friend. My mind, that I am something deeper than my evolutionary mind. Just like I am not my hand, I am not my foot. It's part of me, but it's not me. I am the awareness that lives behind the hand. I am the awareness that lives behind the foot. I am the awareness that lives behind the brain. And so as I started to understand that, now, as I go throughout the day and as I meditate, I am always aware that as a thought comes up, I analyze it and I say, what is this? What is this thought? What is this? Something that's going to serve my happiness? Or is it something that's going to make me miserable? So if someone and we attribute so many things to situations that we make up. The mind is an incredible storyteller. We as human beings, what separates us from other species, from all other species, is our ability to tell stories and our love of stories. So we don't only love to tell stories, we love when other people tell us stories. That is how we built the pyramids. That is how we built the space shuttle. We told stories and we marshaled ourselves together. We conquered the buffalo. We conquered all these things. It's become a very negative thing. We tell ourselves stories that climate change isn't real. We tell ourselves all kind of fucking stories. That is the curse. That is the great attribute of humanity. And like any double-edged sword, it is our curse.
Wow.
Here's a question. So I mean, I love that. And I
Yeah.
am leaning into that space of I am not my thoughts. But there's this rub, I think, and as we're starting to wake up as a species, I feel like there's this rub of like, how do I live my life while at the same time zenning out on meditation? Like, where's the structure and the direction to live from if I'm not my thoughts? If I have thoughts that tell me, hey, set a goal for this, but I'm not that thought, how do I start to make progress in life? Does that make sense?
Well, your awareness, you can map out in moments of repose, you can map out a plan for what you think is going to bring you happiness and bring you in and help you map out your goals and ways to help you achieve your goals. But always aware, and that is where the term mindfulness comes in, always being mindful of the fact that your mind is going to be kicking out thoughts every 2-3 seconds. And after you achieve these, in moments of after meditation, moments of quietness, where you can kind of say, this is the direction I would like to take my life, writing that down. Then as you start to go through the day, you become mindful of the fact that your brain is starting to kick up thoughts all the time, because that's what it does.
Yep.
And then saying, I'm not going to attach to this thought. I'm just going to let it go because it won't serve my happiness and my plan. Or, yes, this serves my plan. I will act upon that.
Wow.
So good.
Yeah.
What's that make you think of, Bobby?
Well, it's just deep. I literally think about, my life and how my mind is definitely attacked and held me back. And I do suffer from anxiety. And what I've been focused on more and more in life is that it's funny that this topic has come up, is that it's just not real, and it holds you back from, frankly, joy.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like in certain cases where it can be not, and I know it's not real at times, but I like what Nick is saying about, like really writing it down. I think it can really hurt people in business a lot. I think it can keep people from the best that they can be in life.
Yeah.
Is that they're literally unable to put these things in quadrants. And there's even a book I've got in my room, and it's called Living with Your Gremlin. And it's actually about this guy. He talks about his thoughts, and he actually gave these negative thoughts a name, and it's his gremlin. And so anytime that he's overcome with these negative thinking, he identifies it as it's a fake thing that sits on his shoulder and whispers in his ears. And I mean, think about it. This goes all the way back to childhood. Of course, how we're grown, how we're raised, and little things that occur in our life. And I always call it like whisper in my ear, like, getting into, for instance, when I first started getting into luxury real estate, there was a little voice that would tell me, "Oh, you'll never be able to do that. You didn't grow up around money. You're not going to do that." And so I literally had to fight through that first, and through coaching and good advice from mentors, I learned that that's not real, and everybody has those type of thoughts. I think it's really just learning to identify it. Yeah. And being mindful of it, right? Yeah. Slowing down.
Every thought that kicks into your head, you have to analyze it.
I mean, that even goes down to think about like food, mindful eating. Yeah. Where we're all just consuming food. And if you think about it and stop and slow down a little bit, you might think before you eat that, and or whatever that the case may be. I mean, I know Nick's been on a journey he's actually the one that really introduced me to meditation. Got me really into it. Like I had done it through Transcendental. You do Transcendental, right? And I had done it, and I kind of let it get away from it. I didn't know anybody else doing it. I was like the only guy in the area I knew doing it. And then I ran into this guy, and he's like, "Yeah, I meditate." And then it kind of got me back into it. So, yeah.
I think, it's interesting as you start to learn more about the mind, then you start. One of the big things that has come up recently is trauma, and how so many of us, I would say everybody, has experienced trauma in one aspect or another. I'll be candid and talk about my daughter. My daughter's trauma was that she watched, and I'm proud of this as a parent, because but she told me that she had watched, and I remember when this happened, she had watched a Disney cartoon in which like Daffy Duck or someone else died, and their spirit like went up. You saw the ghost go up, and it hit her that she was mortal and she was going to die. and it freaked her out. And she has hated sleep ever since.
Hmm.
That's her trauma. We
Wow.
all have trauma.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
right?
I remember that about her sleep.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
and so we all have trauma, and we all have to do this investigative, unless you just are happy not being happy. If that's your goal,
some
then
people are
yeah,
good with that.
they're cool with it.
know?
They're cool with
Yeah,
not being
yeah,
happy.
yeah.
But you know, I think that there are two aspects of the mind, or multiple aspects of the mind. But one is that lizard evolutionary brain, and the other is that traumatized child that says, I can't do it. I can't do it. And you have to be aware of both of those things at all times, and be mindful and keep those things in check and say, you're not real. You are not real. You're not real.
I mean, even the way we perceive ourselves, Chris. I mean,
Yeah.
You know, I follow you and your message that you reach out to people as they try to open up their advertising, or excuse me, not their advertising, but the way they market and be exposed. Here we are sitting in front of a camera, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking, we're exposing our truths a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And some people just can't do that because they're seeing something different, right?
Yeah.
I told Nick earlier, I've never been able to watch one of these all the way through or listen because of where my brain goes. And I had to rely on you. And when we signed all this up and we did all this together, the little tips that you told me of not playing into what your mind's going to tell you.
Yeah.
Because my mind's telling me, oh, don't do it. Nobody's watching it. Nobody really cares. You're not that important. And it's all just a bunch of bullshit.
Well, I mean,
you know,
so much of suffering is all related to the mind not only gives us thoughts, but we also spend so much of our time, especially in this culture. I think it's different in other cultures, but especially in this individualistic culture, we spend 80% of our time telling ourselves stories of who we are. And so the mind is constantly saying, I'm Bobby Johnson, I'm a surfer. I'm Bobby Johnson, I'm a this. I'm Bobby Johnson, I'm this. I'm Bobby. And you know, that whole...
Everybody does that.
We all do it.
You do Bobby Johnson?
Yes. I'm like Bobby Johnson.
Cool, man.
No, but I mean, I do it too. I have that thing too. And so what you start to learn as you delve into the Lucian mind is you learn that the self, this thing that is Nick the Tooth, that's why I've embraced this character, is because I started to understand that any idea that I have of myself is a farce. It's all a farce. It's just a story I tell myself all the time. So what you think of me and what he thinks of me and what someone else thinks of me, it's irrelevant. It's totally fucking irrelevant. And it's totally irrelevant what I think of me. The only thing that matters is the awareness. Now, awareness in when you start to experience pure awareness without thought, for just moments during meditation, you experience pure bliss. That's it. That's the secret to life, man. There is no other secret.
Wow.
No amount of money you can ever earn, and I've made a lot of money, no amount of money will ever buy that for you.
I feel like that's, to your point, that's what's stopping that experience of bliss. I read a book a year ago called Stealing Fire. It was all about altered states, and people who experience altered states will just keep pressing in for, like, you can lose yourself in altered states because you get so addicted to the bliss of that moment and the no thought experience that you'll just keep going that direction. Like people in squirrel suits, like, you know, base jumping down a mountain, or even
why do you think we pursue these adrenaline activities? Why do you think we do drugs? Why do we do drugs? Why do we do all of this? Because it gives us the escape from this false narrative that's always in the brain. Blah, 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 you know?
Yeah.
And there was a great thing on this. There's this Instagram site or account that it's called Now News or something like that. And they just I would say 2 days ago, they had a post by a gentleman who was older, and he talked about doing psychedelics for the first time. And one of the characteristics of psychedelics, is I think is going to your book that you had read, was that if you have a very heavy psychedelic experience, and I do not recommend anybody having a very heavy psychedelic experience without someone guiding them, without someone who knows what they're doing. It's not something you should be doing and going to a party. It's something you should be doing in nature. And they call set and setting are the most important things. Make sure that you're going to be safe, because you can experience trauma with that. And so, but he was talking about, he was an older gentleman, and he talked about how he took a heavy dose of psychedelics, and his idea of self, he just watched it as a physical manifestation just float away from him and just vanish. And he said in that moment, he felt bliss and a connection to everything in the universe.
Wow.
That is that state of samadhi, they call it, from meditation. That really is what a meditator is seeking, is those moments of just the self is gone.
Yeah.
And so I think until you can, it's a big part of this aspect of, is our thoughts aren't real. We are not real. This false identity is real.
Yeah.
As long as you cling to your thoughts,
Yeah.
as long as you cling to this false self, you will suffer.
Yeah, I get, it goes down to like what you were just saying about in the squirrel suit, right?
Right. Yeah.
Hopping in on a wave or
Right. Yeah.
dog chase a ball, right? That dog could be covered in ticks and fleas and itching all over. And the moment it goes,
right,
nothing else. Dropping in on a wave. I mean, you could be overdrawn at the bank, a big fight with your wife. But there's that moment where there's nothing. And I think that's what we're all kind of seeking, is that, the nothingness of all of it, because that's where our relief is, because it takes us away from
our thoughts and
thoughts, which is, it's a deep topic, right?
It is, man.
I knew when he was talking about earlier, I said, oh, Chris will like this.
For sure. I love this conversation. This could get even deeper and we don't need to go there, but I love the idea that, we as souls, we chose to come into this experience for the purpose of expansion. Like the whole point of life would be to simply experience and expand. It's not, that's it. Like all the other stuff is a story on top of that. But the nature of the soul is to simply expand and experience, right? The premise of life is freedom and the purpose of life is joy. So if we just go out and live life that way, then we would stop having so much upset around our experiences.
But Chris, it's hard, because then it's important to understand that it takes work, just like it takes work going into the gym. Yeah. It takes work because, I love the metaphors where, if you think about Buddha, if you think about Christ, if you think about a lot of what they were teaching, is that reality is so temporary. It is an illusion. Okay. And until now we have a new metaphor, right, that people are really drawn to. And that is that reality is not an illusion. Reality is a simulation, right? So reality is a simulation. And so if we are in the matrix, so to speak, when we get glimpses that, wow, this is an illusion, this is a simulation, this isn't really who I am, but then all of a sudden we go about our lives, it's very easy for the mind to slip back into this is real. And that's why it takes diligent meditation, diligent study, and diligent mindfulness throughout the day. When you're washing your dishes, you be in the moment, because only when the mind is in the moment and not jumping to the past, not jumping to the future, not jumping to the past, not jumping to the future, jumping to the past making you feel guilty or shame, jumping to the future making you feel fear. Until you can control your mind and learn to just exist in the moment, you're going to suffer.
Yeah. I mean, have you ever noticed how people like even begin to look like their thoughts? I mean, how powerful is that?
Yeah.
A person.
What do you mean?
You could just see a person that has a tremendous amount of anxiety.
Sure. Yeah.
You can see it in their anger. You see these people kind of become that. And if you've ever been around people that meditate a lot, they have something about them that is just this peacefulness about them. It's actually nice to be around people that follow that path.
Well, how do we end this? How do we make this, how do we take this and make this really actionable for people? How do we take this out of the,
well, I mean, maybe I could ask, let me just ask Nick a question. Obviously a lot of people that tune in here, they're in the real estate, or they are clients of mine, or they're all in business. So what would be a good application for this type of thinking in everyday business, Nick?
Well, I think that it's no different than when I'm going into a jiu-jitsu competition, is to stop focusing on obstacles, to stop focusing on competing with the person next to you who just got a sale, who's driving another car that you don't have. Those things are never going to make you happy. They're just a distraction. So if you can learn to focus on the pure aspect of what you are doing, then you will become great at it. So, so when I'm training jiu-jitsu and I'm drilling, I'm not sitting there thinking, wow, I want to go do this because I can get better than him. I'm thinking, I'm doing this, I'm enjoying it, I'm trying to get as good at it as I can, and the results will come. And so, but that can't just happen when you're trying to make a sale. You cannot just train the mind when you need the mind to actively perform. You need to, when you're washing the dishes, don't think about the next dish. Think about, feel the water over your hands, feel the soap. Do it slowly, enjoy yourself, be in the moment. Be mindful of every activity that you are doing, because when you need it and you haven't trained it, you're screwed.
Wow.
So good.
That is great stuff.
It's a mic drop, Bobby. What do you want to add? Do you want to add anything on top of that? That's a mic drop.
No, I mean, it is a mic drop, and that's why I needed to get Nick on here, because it's an area where my brain's at right now, and I like the idea of, it kind of follows up with the one we did, the grass is always greener.
Yeah.
And that's a good way of looking at it, So if you can become more aware of your thoughts and that they're not real, and focus back on the fact that like from there, like what would be a good cue, one more thing, Nick, of like, you've identified this voice. What do you then do? Do you just, okay, it's not real, and go away, or what?
Just let it go. You just let it go. Attach to it.
Okay.
It's that simple. The thought will, I heard a Tibetan monk, and he was talking about meditation, and he was like, if I sit down and meditate and the thought comes of pizza, he goes, it's okay. And if the next thought comes of pizza, he goes, it's okay. If I become covered up in pizza, it's okay. Eventually the pizza will fade away. It will go. You just don't attach to, you cannot attach to things. Attachment is suffering.
Attachment is suffering. I love it.
That's good. That's a perfect mic drop to end on. Well, listen, gentlemen, Nick, if people want to reach out to you and tune into your podcast, where can people go?
Motus V, MOTUSV.
On all the podcast directories, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, all that. Good.
Find me at Nick the Tooth at Instagram, and
perfect. Okay.
I'm a lunatic, so it's
nice.
Enjoyable.
Love it. Bobby, how about you? If people want to reach out to you, connect with you around real estate or anything else about
30alocalrealestate.com.
Beautiful.
Bobby J on 30A. I'm easy to find. I'm a lunatic too.
You are a lunatic. All right, gentlemen. Thanks for your time today. We'll catch you next time, Bobby. See ya.
Thank you.